Hey guys, what's going on? We're here for the Kimchi Kids podcast, and we're sitting here with two guys from 4-Star Mushrooms. Eric, why don't you start off and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Eric Muehlstein. I help Joe grow the mushrooms. I do environmental controls and design and build mushroom growing systems for about the last 5 years.
Awesome.
And my name's Joe Weber, and I founded 4-Star Mushrooms in 2019.
Very cool.
Awesome.
We're going to start right away diving into this tea here. I'm going to grab this.
It's like
Kenji, you wanna
Willy
bring
Wonka
this
cups.
thing in? So, Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at right here?
So we're looking at a block of reishi mushroom, which is what we're about to drink. So this pretty much represents the mycelium. This was substrate, so it was soybean hulls and red oak sawdust and that kind of lower part.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, the mycelium has digested it and grown these mushrooms. And so we grew them in a bag, which is why they have these kind of long, they're called antlers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because they're looking for oxygen. And so now, if we let them sit out like this, they're going to start to fan out and actually form together and form this like larger fan.
Really?
Yeah.
So for those of you that cannot see what we're looking at, this thing looks
Insane.
unworldly. Like these, it doesn't even look like a mushroom to me. It looks more like I don't know, like
Candy?
Like messed up
it looks like
fingers,
tree branches,
Kinda
right?
like
that are
alien
like
fingers.
red
Yeah.
and
It's definitely alien.
yeah,
Coral.
with like white tips at the top.
It kind of looks like fire coral. If you ever
Okay.
saw fire
Yeah,
coral,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
got like red with white tips.
Yeah. And so this particular mushroom, reishi, has some very strong medicinal properties to it. Do you want to share what exactly it's mainly used for, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been used in traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years. All mushrooms pretty much have beta glucans, which are known to modulate your immune system. They're also shown to reduce tumor growth, and reishi has some specific beta glucans which have been shown to do that as well. And then there's also ganideric acids, which are like just this novel class of compounds that are only found in reishi mushrooms. A lot of different medicinal mushrooms have these novel compounds that are not found anywhere else, and ganideric acids are just an example of that. And they've been shown to decrease like allergic reactions.
Oh wow.
Among other things. I mean, tumor growth is definitely one of the things that's studied the most on these
Interesting.
guys.
So Andy yesterday took some of this amazing mushroom home. What did you do to this?
Basically, I got a very strong knife out and just chopped it up. Threw it in a blender, and then,
Your blender survived.
well, it's like 3 horsepower.
Because this stuff is really like, for those of you guys that have never seen this thing, like I was touching this thing yesterday, and it is incredibly tough. Like
Yeah.
It's woody.
It's-
Very woody.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's why it doesn't, like, mushroom doesn't even come to mind when you're touching this thing. So
it's not woody. It's like almost like plastic, or it's very tough.
It's like spray foam or, yeah.
Yeah.
And so these are very fresh, and because they've been in the bag, they've had that really high humidity for its entire life. But if you're walking around the forest and you see like a log that's fallen, and there's a bunch of mushrooms growing on the side, they look like
I see,
shells.
yeah.
That's what
That's
the
what this is.
high oxygen phenotype is of this mushroom.
Yeah.
So when it's dried, it's like it is a rock.
So we steeped these for a few hours yesterday, strained them out, and we made this delicious tea. Interestingly enough, this smells like not like mushrooms.
no, it
I want to
doesn't.
smell that again. It doesn't smell or taste anything like the tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it has all these like spice elements to it,
Yeah,
almost like
100%.
turmeric.
It's wild.
I got to taste some.
Oh, you just man.
Oh, you went for it.
How is it
So
when
we're
you're chewing
trying?
it?
It's less
Spitting
bitter
it
than the tea. It's not. I'm not going
Okay.
to swallow it. It's like hard,
Okay.
but it's less bitter than the tea.
Could be like a spitter.
Well,
it doesn't
I
taste
mean,
the way
well,
it doesn't taste as good as
maybe
it
I
smells.
like
wonder if
extracted
when you
the
extracted the flavors
flavors
from
from
it, steeping it. So after steeping it, how long did you steep this thing for?
A good like 4 hours or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can steep this for a long,
Yeah,
long
yeah, yeah.
time.
Oh wow.
But that's
you want
probably.
to.
I mean, it's still, and I tried it. It was super bitter yesterday. But
So I mean, I'm looking at this. It's like pale gold in color. And just I don't know. I mean, it's also in a yellow cup, so it's kind of hard to figure this. But
So it's pretty similar color actually to the extract that we get made of the reishi.
Okay.
And so we'll do, I mean, you pretty much did a decoction. We'll do a hot water extract and
Yeah.
then an ethanol extract.
Okay.
And it's got a pretty similar taste.
yeah, that's good, man.
that's bitter.
That's not. It's not as bitter as I thought.
Did you
No.
boil, you boiled it?
I boiled it. Yeah.
I wonder if there's like a method where you could do a first extraction and like get rid of the highest bitter notes and then put it back and do a second extraction that's like getting more of those
Right.
notes.
But I think that the bitterness is actually is
part of
advantageous
the
because you're getting that
Yeah,
those
that
medicinal
medicine.
compounds pulled out. Yeah.
It's not like offensive, you know. It's definitely has that bitterness there. It also has like this tannic quality to it. When I said like tannin, like that you get from grape skin,
Like dries out.
which is like very common that when you get with like tea, right? Like when you're over extracting tea, you get that kind of like slightly dry, bitter, like grippy texture on the palate, which could be used in a cocktail, right? I mean, if that's what you're looking for. So.
And this is just straight. Like we haven't added honey
Yeah,
or anything
nothing
to it.
Nothing to it. Can I have some more?
And so, just right off the bat, what is this most popular, like the most commonly like sought after for like purposes?
Definitely tea.
Okay.
Yeah. So in traditional Chinese medicine, it's been used for tea for centuries.
Wow.
More recently, there's been advances in technology where people are doing tinctures. So what I was talking about with like a dual extract, where you're doing a part ethanol, part hot water extraction.
One second. Sorry to interrupt. I think there's a lot of verbiage we need
Yeah.
to explain. So when you say tinctures, can you please elaborate?
Yeah. So tincture is it's a 2-part extract.
Okay.
And so what we're doing is we're taking this dry material or processed material and just running hot water over it for a while, and then extracting all the water soluble constituents out of it, and then we're doing the same thing with hot ethanol.
Okay.
And so we actually do this under a vacuum, because the boiling point for both of those solvents is lower,
Yeah.
and so it maintains the compounds without breaking them down, because we're constantly recycling because we want to get that all of those medicinal compounds.
So the idea is
out.
the vacuum keeps the temperature down, so you're not denaturing things.
Yeah,
but you're
correct.
still getting the benefits of the actual boiling.
Yeah,
That's
correct.
cool. Okay.
And alcohol versus just water.
So they're like ganideric acids.
Okay.
Those are alcohol soluble. And it makes that tincture 30% ABV, which is shelf stable.
Okay.
So it's nice because if you just do a hot water extract, there's a shelf life to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Oh,
Essentially.
interesting.
And so when you have 30% alcohol, it lasts forever.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And so so this tincture, it's not. Is it available right now?
It is, yeah.
And where can people get this tincture?
So you can find it on our website at 4starmushrooms.com.
Awesome. And like, so are they supposed to just like an eyedropper and you just kind of?
Yeah, they come in 2-ounce little Boston Round tincture jars. And, I'd typically recommend mixing it with a drink or something at first because it can be very bitter. Like we were saying, that's actually a good thing. But, I mean, I'll just do it under my tongue because I'm kind of used to it.
Yeah.
But if you mix it into a smoothie, into coffee, into whatever.
Yeah, you can't taste it.
Yeah, it masks it really well.
Right. I mean, it's not that bad. I thought it would be
It's
much
not
worse.
bad at all. I mean,
It's actually good.
I just feel like it's really similar to like a lot of tea like
Yeah.
that I've had. So nothing about it was. I think maybe like when we were talking about it yesterday, like I was like expecting this like super bitter, but like if you had poured me that and didn't tell me what it was, I would just be like, oh, this is tea.
A tiny bit of vanilla, a tiny bit of sweetener, and it's
Yeah,
gone.
there's like a nutty aftertaste to it. That's actually pleasant.
It's quite good, actually.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd be curious to see what it tastes like if you did like a 48-hour extraction on it. Just like a really low and slow and
Yeah,
pulled all that out, got it nice and dark.
Right.
Yeah. Can we have this just cleared off? So going back, 2019. This is where I think things get a little interesting here. So you started 4-Star Mushrooms September of 2019.
So we actually started growing mushrooms in September. There was about a 6-month period before that where we had to get a lease, understand how to grow mushrooms and set up the vendors and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then navigate the permit process to get a building permit, get a business license, which was like first 6 months was some of the most challenging time
Right.
of the business.
So is this something that, I mean, I understand you graduated at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign,
Correct, yeah.
and you have a degree in biology.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that, like, that day you were like, I want to do mushrooms? Like, what was it that led you there?
Yeah, so it actually came probably in 2018. But to back up a little bit, I've always been drawn to ecosystems and habitats, ecology, biodiversity. That's just like kind of always where my heart has been, and where my mind goes. And so I initially started studying landscape architecture.
Right.
So thinking about like creating landscapes, creating ecosystems. And then I just wasn't learning enough. I wasn't getting enough answers to the questions that I had because it was so much design focused.
Yeah.
And so that kind of prompted me to focus on a more scientific course load. And from there, I mean, I think we had one lesson in all my classes on mushrooms.
Wow.
Like just one.
Yeah, you don't learn much about mushrooms in school.
Nothing. We learned about like their reproductive cycle, and it was like half of a lecture.
Yeah.
So coming out of college, I mean, I think that being in Champaign was it was a really good thing because I had a 3-hour drive down all through corn and soybean fields.
Right.
And that's like as far as you can see. So like seeing all these monocrop agriculture operations, like really started to make me think like, okay, like how's our food system set up?
Yeah.
And then I took an ecology course, and my professor was talking about all the detrimental effects of monocrop agriculture on biodiversity and ecology, these things that like I'm really passionate about. So that actually pushed me in the direction of controlled environment ag, like just that whole space.
Yeah.
Mushrooms weren't really even considered at that point. I just figured that like that's got to be a way that we feed the future, you know, getting
Agreed.
the lettuce out of the desert and putting it next to Lake Michigan in a warehouse seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then I listened to just like one day, I was working this job as like a solar technician, residential solar technician. Just didn't really know what I wanted to do. Kind of like graduated, got this job. And I'm listening to this podcast, an interview with Paul Stamets. And that was like the first time I'd heard of him. First time I had been introduced to like what mushrooms do in the ecosystem and what they do for people's health and like the culinary benefits of them. And so that was the moment where it like sparked. I was like, okay, these like they fill that need that we're talking about with like ecosystems and ecosystem restoration.
Yeah.
But they're also a perfect candidate for indoor cultivation. And they're currently being cultivated indoors, and people happen to be sharing what they know on YouTube.
Yeah.
So from there, it was like, nobody's doing this in Chicago. Let's give it a whirl.
That's awesome.
For sure.
And just Paul, like what was the thing that struck you specifically, like the most about what you heard from him? And I mean, this guy, some of the stuff that he's doing is incredible.
Yeah.
Just like doing a little bit of research on this guy and seeing like his presentation. What is it that maybe you're hoping to kind of push further, or just kind of like embody in what you guys are doing at 4-Star?
Yeah, so he is doing a lot of amazing things. I think what really struck me initially was just the concept of mushrooms being this like interface between life and death, and they're kind of the grand decomposers of the planet.
Yeah.
And they're regulating the flow of nutrients from life to death, from above ground into the soil.
Yeah.
And soil's everything.
Yeah.
And so like I had a position as an ecological restoration team member for a while. So like putting that with like how, like for instance, mycorrhizal fungi can be used to like remediate soil and work with plants was just, it was fascinating to me because you don't see it. You know, when you're in the forest, you don't see the web of mycelium that's connected to all these plants.
Yeah.
So that was eye opening because I'd never known about that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so cool. So we happened to stop by his facilities yesterday at Four
Right.
Star, and they had those petri dishes.
Yeah.
With all the mycelium growing and the webs growing, and like I had never thought of it like that, where like in the natural world, like in the forest where you do find these mushrooms, like
Right.
beneath what you don't see, it's like this web that connects everything.
Yeah.
Pick up a wet leaf and you'll see
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah.
You know? You'll see
Yeah.
that.
It's insane.
And people think that like, oh, like mushrooms just, they pop up out of nowhere, which they kind of do.
Yeah.
But there's like this, the mushroom is really it's only the reproductive part of it. There's like this resident organism that's like either living in the tree,
Yeah.
living in the dead log, living in the soil.
It's an iceberg, right? It's like 90% of the organism is
It's
on
everything
site.
else. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward a little bit. So then in 2019, you make the move. You open up your shop. When did you two get involved here?
Like spring of 2020, like maybe
Yeah.
May of 2020. And I had taken a couple years off, maybe a year and a half off of like doing anything mushroom related. Previously, I was working with a startup called Sojourn Fair, and we were developing mushroom technology products. So it was like tabletop herb garden size for mushrooms up to a warehouse, like one single warehouse unit sized. We got to a point, I think we had a really good product. We struggled to raise the money to actually get it manufactured and like, you know, made in China, which was a big expensive process, and we kind of lost momentum.
Yeah.
And I was just burned out, and I came across Joe, and I was like, I really like what this guy's doing. I don't know if I want to get into mushrooms, but I'm just going to call him and say, hey.
Yeah.
And like from there, I was like, this guy's living in the suburbs and driving into Logan Square every morning. No idea whether his mushrooms are living or dead, whether the air conditioning's working. I'm like, dude, we got to get you on the internet so you can look and not leave bed and make sure that everything's okay.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing since.
Yeah, we were flying dark for quite some time.
Yeah.
I showed up a couple mornings and it was just a disaster.
Oh my god.
And so like, I mean, right in the midst of a pandemic, like what were some of the changes that you had to make, like kind of going into that big change and shift in what was happening?
Yeah, well, it was actually it was a nice shakeup actually. So like we were just trying to get into the best restaurants that we could for those 6 months before that fateful Sunday where everybody shut down. And then when we had started to gain some traction, you know, started to understand what the customers are looking for, started to learn how to grow mushrooms really, because I mean, before this, I'd never grown them, rarely ate them, never cooked them. Like
Really?
I was like not in on mushrooms, and then I just started growing them. So like there was a learning curve and like just understanding them.
Yeah.
So that first 6 months kind of acted as that learning curve. And then pandemic hit, all the business fell off for at least a month. Did some home deliveries. We work with the local foods. They were great. Juan at Local Foods, their produce manager, was great because he was just like, just give me what you got. Like he understood the situation.
Yeah,
He knew
very
that they were going to stay open. They could move it. So like they helped a lot. And then Alinea started to do the to-go,
Okay.
which was like a huge success. They were doing, you know, in the suburbs, they were doing a crazy amount every single day. And I had been talking to them a little bit before. The problem was they were buying at 800 pounds per week.
That's insane.
I'm like, I'm doing 35. So it just like, it wasn't feasible. Even if the quality was there on the product, it wasn't feasible to sell to them.
What was your grow space at this point? Was like 15 feet by 8 or something?
Yeah, it was a 400 square foot warehouse that had like a 6x6 walk-in,
Right.
an 11 by 17 grow room, and then like this little narrow space where I would do all my sales,
Your
do
office.
all the harvesting,
Yeah.
do everything.
That's incredible to see, especially like when we were at the warehouse yesterday, to see like the transition and evolution of, you know, where you've taken this thing from. So, how did you what was like your first step getting into restaurants? Like, what was there an introduction did you know somebody, and who was like your first big like your first big fuck yeah, I got a nice account here?
RPM Italian was the first big one. Yeah. And they were doing 40 pounds a week, which at the time was like, man, this is
a lot.
bread and butter. Yeah. And I mean, I came from the outside on this, so like that was a learning experience too, but it was just like following up and bringing in samples and talking to the chef and like telling them what we had and like making sure that we could supply them once they were ready. And like one thing that I learned quickly is that chefs are very, very busy, and once you have them, you have to like capture their attention. You got to follow up and make sure that they like, you have to be doing all that sales. So it took a month or two, and then we landed them. GT Prime was right after that, and then some smaller ones in between. And what I was saying before is that I was talking with Alinea. They were doing 800 pounds a week. Couldn't do that. They started to do this to go, where they had these side bags for like VIPs. And they're like, well, we can take whatever you got for that, and we'll just throw them in VIP bag. Yeah. And then they started to work with them, really liked them. And that was like one of the big catalysts in allowing us to grow, because we had this whale, if you will, that could take whatever we're growing and put it to use. And so that was huge.
Yeah. Very cool.
Eric, I want to talk more about so we saw a lot of cool gadgets and technology happening, and it was a lot. I'll be honest, I was completely overwhelmed yesterday by everything that was happening.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't want to make it too complicated. I don't want to get too into it. But I guess what's interesting about growing mushrooms is that it's really wet. Like, where else are you trying to operate in constantly 90% humidity?
Yeah.
No computer in the world wants to be there.
Right.
So I think a lot of what I've learned, and a lot of what I think Joe and I have learned together, is how to make things modularized, how to reduce the risk by sort of compartmentalizing things. And I think the other big benefit of the technology, aside from getting Joe out of just panic mode every morning, is that we've been collecting data now for a year and a half, 2 years almost, and it's this is all the data that improves our recipes. Yeah. So we look back and we're still struggling to get really good quantitative and qualitative data in terms of what's going out the door. We don't have an internal ranking system where we can say that 80% of our mushrooms were this grade, but we do have our volumes, we have our weights, and we're using our previous conditions to set the conditions in the future and adjust. I mean, this comes down to you, even down to substrate recipes and stuff that doesn't touch my controls.
Yeah.
But having all that data is impossible to operate without it these days.
Yeah. No, I loved seeing how controlled everything was, and all the different experiments that you guys were doing. It's just fascinating to see.
One of the things that really keeps me going, you're asking him about Paul Stamets and what drew him in, and I thought about what's really cool about Paul Stamets, he's kind of a goofball, right? And he tells the same 3 stories every podcast he goes on. I love the guy. But he's a legit citizen scientist. And he found this field that wasn't dominated by agriculture, wasn't being pushed into by academia enough, and just started doing citizen science. And I think that's, as a dude that doesn't have a degree and just loves growing stuff and learning stuff, that's my guy.
Yeah.
I can't believe how little we know about mushrooms, though. How little the education system cares about them. They're so fucking important, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, they're they're the interface between life and death and resource cycling on the planet, which is, when it comes down to it, resource cycling is everything.
Yeah, it's I was what was that thing called we were watching?
Fantastic Fungi.
Yeah, Fantastic Fungi.
You should, if you're listening, definitely find it on YouTube and watch it.
It's on Netflix as well.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I just saw it on YouTube.
I think one of the scary things about that, I think it was Fantastic Fungi, where the guy's talking about how there's very few fungus that live above 39 degrees Celsius, which is body temperature. And one of the weird consequences of global warming is that we're training everything to survive 1 degree warmer, right? And that doesn't really matter for most things, but the only fungus that really attacks your body, there's one in your lungs, and there's toe fungus. But imagine now that this whole world of fungus can live 1 degree higher. All of a sudden, we're going to see more fungal illnesses. Yeah. Whether you want to or not, you're going to be learning about fungus in the future.
Right.
Because
we love them now, but we might hate them in the future.
Yeah, when they start growing inside of you.
Right. Well, they're powerful. I mean, they can be
Athlete's
powerful,
heart.
good or bad. So the more we understand, the better either way.
Yeah, I think as we've kind of like got to dive into this a little bit, there's two sides to this that are incredibly fascinating to me. One is the culinary side of this. We just were able to taste a variety of the mushrooms that you're growing and see the differences in texture and flavor, all these little nuances. And it can be such a delicious item to enjoy, but at the same time, what you're doing over there is not only just producing food, but you're also looking into this medicinal category and the power, like all these unique characteristics that mushrooms offer. And just going back to not only the reishi, but one of the biggest things that you guys are doing over there is this lion's mane that I feel like is generally getting more and more popular with the public. I know that I was like introduced to like lion's mane extract in powder form a couple years ago, and you want to just shed a little bit of light on this unbelievable mushroom.
Yeah, absolutely. So lion's mane, it's a nootropic, so it's actually helping regrow neurons and like really help your brain. And so some of the research that it's going towards is like preventing Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and these neurodegenerative diseases.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So there's I guess my understanding of it is that there's the neurons, and then there's axons that go between the neurons, and there's signals that go between or along this axon. On the axon, there's a sheath. It's like this coating, so the signals don't leak out, but those can break down and they can get plaque on them.
So you get like Parkinson's and
Exactly. Yeah.
Because the signals aren't traveling.
Exactly. And so what lion's mane extract, the papers that I've read, the ethanol extract has been able to do is regrow that myelin sheath, and so like maintain the signal in the brain, and that, I mean, it's neurons, so like it goes like with Parkinson's, it can fix so many different things.
It's crazy.
Even just like mild brain fog.
Yeah.
So
is it good to like take it preventatively as well?
I think so.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that, do you guys eat and drink lion's mane tea and often, or is it part of your regular diet, or?
I do.
I don't. I'm a culinary guy. I like savory, salty stuff, and my health comes second to that.
So I'll eat lion's mane
Yeah.
because we have it available. And then we're also working on some lion's mane supplements, and that's probably just going to come once we get to scale.
Yeah.
Really,
For sure.
But once I have that at hand, I'll be taking it all the time.
Joe,
Yeah.
you used the word nootropic, right? What was the first word?
Nootropic.
Nootropic. I hear the word adaptogenic a lot also. And like, again, being more of the culinary guy, do you know what the difference is?
I don't really. Well, nootropic has to relate. It relates with the neurons.
Yeah.
I think adaptogenic. I'm not totally sure about adaptogenic because I've
It
heard
sounds
reishi
like
is adaptogenic.
this is a complete guess.
Yeah, make something up.
But it sounds like maybe it helps your like genes that are working against you, like cancer and things like that, and maybe helps it adapt to a more healthy state.
And maybe like some of that, like a modulation of the immune system instead of like spiking the immune system or like dampening it, like making sure that it's kind of even keeled.
These are some of the biggest words we've ever used on this podcast. And
we don't go over 3 syllables here.
But I'm extremely fascinated with this stuff. I was also curious. I was like, I wonder what the effectiveness is between eating it like in its mushroom state versus like the extract powder form, which like I think if I remember correctly, when I had this powder, it was like not a lot. You didn't need a lot in that.
So there's a spectrum of these different lion's mane powders.
Yeah.
So on the far end of the spectrum, you have like a 10-to-1 extract powder, which is like 10 parts of the mushroom to 1 part of the dried, and that's gonna be super potent. That's extracted and then dried. Okay. A lot of times, what you find is a lion's mane powder, and that could be the powdered mushroom, which is slightly bioavailable, but not that bioavailable, because it needs that the cell walls is really the key with these mushrooms. They're made of chitin, which is really, really tough. And we don't have any chitinase, which is an enzyme that breaks down chitin. Or I don't know, like 15% of people do. I don't think I'm one of them.
What is chitin?
Is that what like lobster shells are made out of?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's very, very tough.
So and chitin is found in.
It's the cell walls of pretty much all mushrooms.
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, that's why, like when you're cooking them, that's why you have to like really cook them
Yeah.
and really chew them too, or else like you're not going to be breaking that down. So I think that there are benefits. There definitely are benefits to eating lion's mane, medicinal benefits.
Yeah.
But if you want like a really highly potent benefit, it's
Yeah.
going to be from a stronger extract.
Okay.
And so you probably want to stay away from the just powdered mushrooms, powdered mycelium. It's all kind of gray area on how effective that stuff is.
Do you give any credence to the idea that like you shouldn't eat raw mushrooms? What's the like? I think Stamets said you shouldn't eat anything agaricus. You shouldn't eat button mushrooms raw because they're toxic.
Well, oyster mushrooms and lion's mane have a heat-sensitive toxin.
Oh, interesting.
That's like denatured at 135 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
And so like if you eat a raw lion's mane, you'll get like slightly itchy throat. It's not going to kill you or anything, but
Right.
like, and you're also just not breaking. You're not going to digest that.
Yeah.
If you just pop a little mushroom in your mouth, it's
Can
not-
you
yeah.
have too much lion's mane?
No.
So and people can find your lion's mane at local foods.
Correct. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so we're going to be offering some new products, hopefully around the holiday season. We're going to be doing a fried lion's mane sandwich that kind of looks like a
Yes.
Chick-fil-A
Like a chicken-
sandwich.
yeah.
What's
And-
going to go on what's on the sandwich?
What's the
The
build?
build?
Oh, that's going to be a secret until we release it.
okay.
It looked delicious.
Well,
though.
we'll just have to wait and see and just try it for ourselves.
Exactly, yeah.
So. And that's going to be available on Talk.
Yeah, that's the plan right now.
And you're selling it straight directly from 4-Star Mushrooms.
Yeah, we'll probably do some sort of pop-up situation where we actually like do a pickup.
Oh,
But yeah, we'll be working out of the kitchen and just one day go in there, let everybody know what we're doing, and then post it and
See what happens.
see what happens. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So you dodged foraging, but can we talk about foraging in our little Chicago
Oh, yeah,
experiment a little
absolutely.
bit?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite like just random activities that I get into with Chuck sometimes is exploring a cemetery by my house, and it's like 11 p.m. or after 11 p.m. hop the fence, and you have this like awesome nature preserve all by yourself.
Because the best time to forage for mushrooms is in the dark.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Is that true?
Yeah, I can't.
Absolutely.
Okay. I was like,
It's just when you're busy running a mushroom farm.
Or you
that's, like,
mean
when
the
you
best
get
time to
out.
trespass is in the dark?
Yes.
We were looking for Chuck's dog, I swear. But it was like maybe 5 weeks ago, we went out to the cemetery and we found some local live oyster mushrooms and pulled them down and cut them up, and Joe put them on a petri dish. And I mean, tell us what you think. I don't think it's going to be viable for growing, but
Yeah, if you compare it to like the stuff that we're using right now, you can barely see it. It's a lot weaker than the commercial strains that we use. But we're also entering this new kind of phase where we're talking about training two things. We're talking about training fungi to be able to digest different substrates. And so the idea with that is we take this mushroom that we found and then we slowly introduce it to our growing medium and then teach it how to produce the enzymes that it needs to digest that medium. And so eventually, down the road, we'll be able to grow that and offer it. And that's like our Chicago strain of mushroom.
or we breed it with the commercial strains, right? And all of a sudden
Exactly,
we've
yeah.
got like the sour diesel cross Rosewood Cemetery.
I love it.
Why is it that the commercial strains wouldn't it be found stronger in nature?
yeah, that's what I would. But
Well, so the commercial strains are, they're bred in a lab and they're constantly evaluated and isolated for vigor and yield and speed of colonization. So all that stuff.
It's like meat chickens, right? Like
Yeah.
they grow big and fast, and maybe that wouldn't grow as well outside because the conditions aren't as controlled.
that's true.
That is true.
And so the varieties that you guys are offering right now, what are they?
So we've got a handful of different oyster mushrooms we do. Right now in the grow room, we've got blue oyster, elm oyster, black oyster, phoenix oyster, king trumpet, which is also an oyster, lion's mane, chestnut mushroom. We got some maitake coming in. We're starting to get the hang of that. That's a tricky one. And then reishi.
Awesome.
What's tricky about the maitake?
So it's got a longer time horizon. And so like oyster mushrooms, you can start them and finish them in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh.
Maitake takes about like 6 to 7. And it's very delicate. So like with the oyster mushrooms, if there's a pinhole, it'll grow. Like it'll find a way.
Yeah.
With the maitake, you kind of have to like, as it starts to form in the bag, you have to like give it a little bit of oxygen, like fluff it up a little bit. If it gets too much air pushed on it, it will like kind of like shrink up and say no thanks.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a lot of nuances, but it's been fun to learn those.
Yeah.
And how long did it take to grow that reishi?
Man, that's been sitting on a shelf for months. Because we grew it in the bag, there was no reason to really stop.
Yeah.
We're just kind of limited by our dehydrator space right now.
Yeah.
So whenever we have space in there, we just take a couple blocks down, harvest them. We're actually harvesting those with pruning shears.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
that's
tough,
crazy.
man.
They're incredibly tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain to our viewers maybe the misconception of mold?
Mold is not scary.
This was really.
But why?
Well, so, I mean, what we're growing is akin to mold. Mycelium is akin to mold. Like, mold is just, it's just not mushroom forming, right? Mm-hmm. So, you should probably be scared of some molds. Mm-hmm. But, like, going through this whole process, like, we're pretty much, most of this life cycle is, like learning how to create an environment for what looks like just a mold.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because the mycelium that we saw forming, right?
In
To
the
me,
petri dish.
it looked, or even in the bags, they're just
Yeah.
like
Oh,
little
yeah, that's
blobs
true.
of mold.
I mean, like, what's tempa? Tempa's mold, right? Koji, those are all mold
Yeah.
things.
Right.
And the difference is they don't have
Bacteria.
the fruiting bodies like mushrooms do.
Right.
Exactly.
See, I don't think those are bacteria. That's an important distinction, right?
Yeah.
It's a completely different kingdom actually, because there's the fungal kingdom.
Yeah.
But like, so one of the really cool stories about mold is penicillin. Are you guys familiar with that?
Yeah, got to see that actually. That was pretty cool.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
but
Please do
please
explain.
shed some light on it.
So people don't really realize, but a fungus or a mold really won World War II.
Yeah.
There was a moldy cantaloupe in Illinois that this woman found, and they cultured at a lab, and that ended up being the penicillium strain that was used in World War II to treat these wounds. And like,
Peoria, Illinois, random. Like, they knew that penicillin was a thing, but they found one that grew way faster because this one lady was just like, look at this cantaloupe.
Yeah,
But
it was
how
like
did
an
she-
orange mold, right, or something like that.
What? How did she go from moldy cantaloupe to, oh, this is gonna heal
Yeah,
people?
I don't know who you call.
They already knew that penicillin was like medicine. They just hadn't figured out how to grow it fast yet. And this lady was like a biochemical researcher. I might be misquoting the story, but I think this lady was like a researcher, and she's at the grocery store, and she just has like messed up cantaloupe,
Yeah.
and she just has to have it.
gotta culture it.
Yeah, and that was the one. It was like, this grows 10 times faster than anything else. We can produce this for the soldiers.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Because World War I, you'd die of a stomach wound.
Yeah, yeah.
And if we were the first country to have that.
That's insane.
Yeah. So it's amazing.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
I want to jump into. I got a question. So your father is a extremely successful businessman who started 3 businesses, and he's a published author. And does he have a hand in your, like, how does he have an influence in how you're running the business? And do you go to him for advice on things? And
Yeah. And I think it's like, just in general for entrepreneurs, it's pretty imperative to have a mentor. And I was just lucky enough for that to be my dad.
Yeah, that's
and to
awesome.
kind of have that from the get-go. And like, I always, because I saw that he was doing that, I knew that was a potential. So I kind of always had the bug to start a business.
That's cool.
But yeah, when you're starting out, there's so many unknowns, and it's very easy to get discouraged and to not really know what direction, especially with mushrooms, because like we're talking about, there's so many different directions that you can go.
Yeah.
You really do need to like stay course and like focus on the core business, at least for a period of time.
Yeah.
And so he was, he was and continues to be crucial in that, and like really helping me understand how to scale.
Yeah.
Because he's been there before and he knows.
Yeah.
So having him has been great, but just having a mentor in general it's crucial.
Right.
Your whole family's behind the thing. I mean, it's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Like I interact with his mom and his brother's working at the farm, and
Cool.
it's a good. It's just really cool seeing everyone come together and support Joe's business.
I mean, it's incredible to see how wildly successful your company's going at the rate that it's going. I mean, just from starting in 2019, dealing with the challenges of the pandemic, and then having serving your food in like some of these restaurants that we've named. These are not
they're not like mom and pop shops. They're like
these are incredible restaurants with incredible chefs, and it's
a testament to like the quality of. I mean, we got to try all those mushrooms earlier, and man, they're delicious.
Did you have a favorite of the bunch?
I don't know. They all kind of like I have different reasons for liking different ones, but I think the blue oyster I think was just
Seems to be the crowd favorite.
yeah.
Interesting.
It was so good. Like the texture on it. You mentioned like because of the gills, you get some Maillard on there, and you get a ton of texture. And we didn't do anything to it. We added salt.
Yeah, kept it very simple.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Did you guys have a favorite that stood out to you guys?
I think mine's lion's mane through and through.
Yeah.
It is good.
I told you, but we don't grow shiitake, but that's like my go-to cooking mushroom.
Okay.
Of the things we grow, the maitakes, and it's a shame we didn't have those ready today, but those are freaking awesome.
Yeah, but the lion's mane today was also my first time actually eating a lion's mane. And, man, it was strange, delicious, deliciously strange. Right?
Texture was incredible.
It's like creamy in the middle, and had the nice texture on the outside, and with all the little hairs or whatever you call it.
The tendrils.
Tendrils,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I think most people don't understand what this thing looks like, and the first time I saw the image of that, it's mind blowing. It doesn't even look like a mushroom. It's just looks like I don't know.
Looks like an animal.
How do you describe
Hair,
it?
it's lions. It looks like lion head. It's like a white lion's mane.
Right.
But it looks like a brain a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you crack it open, right? The like striations.
How do you even get your hands on starting all of these? I mean, what's like the process of like I guess like the first part of cultivating these?
Yeah, sure. So you can. We start with what's called spawn. And so I guess to start at the very beginning, you can take spores from a mushroom, you can put them onto a petri dish, essentially that's got agar and like some sugar. And so you take a little culture of that from the mushroom, where you take some spores and you put it on there, and that provides like a 2D surface to watch the fungus grow.
Okay.
And that's really important because if you have a 2D surface, you can see any contaminants that might be popping up. And so you'll grow it out there, and then you can take it and you make transfers. So the mycelium's growing out, you take that leading edge and you take a cut from it, and then you can take each of those and put them onto more plates. Or you can take that, you can put it into like a sugar broth and make a liquid culture. You can take those, you can put them into grains, which is what we do. And we take those grains then are colonized by the mycelium from that petri dish. And so after, a week or so, you'll have a jar or a bag of grains that's just all white.
And the grains are cool because they're like little flavor crystals, right? It's like they're rye berries, and they're kind of like al dente cooked rye berries. So they keep their form, and they turn into like little mushroom seeds. They're seeds, right? But they're covered in mushrooms, so you can spread them into the next step.
Exactly, yeah. So and then those go into what we call the production blocks. And our production blocks are made up of soybean hulls and red oak sawdust.
That's the substrate.
The substrate, yeah, exactly.
Right. See, I'm learning things.
How often do chefs like even inquire about this whole process when you're going out and meeting them or showing your products?
I think some of them are kind of privy to it. They understand what's going on, and others are like, so how long does it take? Like, where do you get your spores from? That's a common question.
Interesting.
Because like you think of spores as kind of the starting point, but because we start from this grain spawn, we're actually starting from the spores are diploid. And so I think haploid, yeah. And so then the mycelium is the actual organism. So like the spores are used to like germinate together and that's how you can like make new strains essentially.
Each spore can land and grow by itself, but it's not until two of these growths meet together that they make like a full mushroom that can make more fruit.
Yeah.
So it's like if your sperm could grow for a while by itself, it's a little scary.
But it actually but it doesn't form the mushroom unless it.
It has that. So it's half the genetics here, and then another one's growing with half the genetics, and they come and they form these knots, hyphoid knots or something they're called, and that has all the genetic material to go and make a whole new mushroom.
Man, so you guys really geeked out on this mushroom stuff, huh?
How did you get so like well versed in this? Like
Can I plead the fifth? Like
Eric's well
some
versed in
college,
everything.
like some closet grows in college. I've always been into technology and into growing things. In, high school, I was into FFA horticulture. I was like a nationally ranked horticulture floral arranger guy.
Awesome.
I was really into growing orchids, and then that led to cannabis, to mushrooms.
Gotcha.
And then just came full circle with like, oh, people will pay money for like culinary mushrooms. That's even cooler.
Yeah. I don't have to hide these.
And it was interesting. When I was growing orchids in high school, people were like, oh man, you could grow weed. And I'm like, dude, weed is a weed. It's so easy. Do you know how hard it is to grow these orchids? And I feel the same way about growing culinary mushrooms. It's like anyone can grow psychedelic mushrooms. It's really easy. It's not.
And that's usually the first
hard.
question that everybody asks us is like, are they the fun kind? I'm like, get real.
It's the same thing. I was like, I don't take any pride in that. That's so much easier than doing what you're doing. You know?
Yeah, it grows on shit.
Yeah.
Literally.
No, the mushrooms are incredible, and it's insane to see the progress that you've already made. And honestly, like just at like all the new projects that you've got coming up, that I think is going to be really cool. You were talking about expansion pretty soon, right?
Yeah, and thank you for that. I mean, it has been. It's cool to like when you guys come by and I can show you because it puts it back into perspective how far we've come.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking towards next year, we're at the point where like we can't fill the demand that we have, and we keep on getting these. We keep on just grabbing whatever room opens up in this space, and it's kind of like puzzle piece together. And so it's time to just like really make it legit and go into a space where it's all under the same roof, same floor. We can design it. We can design a master plan so everything's working efficiently. Because the biggest challenge I think with growing mushrooms is scaling that labor. And it's a tricky problem, but I think that we've got a pretty good idea of how to do it. And so right now we're looking for space, trying to close on space. And then from there, once we're locked in on that, we're going to hit the ground running, and hopefully by like the spring, we'll have something to show for it. And then we'll just be growing from there.
How big of a space are we talking here?
So we don't have anything on the books yet, but we're looking at like a minimum 10,000 square feet.
Okay. So big.
And then, that's just starting. So
Are you guys planning on being in more grocery stores, like making it more accessible for people to come and just pick it up from a shop?
Yeah, absolutely. And the core competency of the business really is to just grow unique, rare, and nutrient dense mushrooms. And so whatever avenues we can get those to people, we're going to do it. And, that's going to be grocery stores. It's going to be people that like other people that want to sell at farmers markets, potentially. It's going to be restaurants. It's going to be meal kit services, private dining, extractions, like mushroom coffee. Like there's so many different avenues to go down. What we're focusing on hard right now is just getting to the point where we can have the production to explore these. Because right now our production is just eaten up pretty much right away.
That's incredible, man.
I feel like one of the things that stood out when I was like looking into what you're doing is like I guess a focal point for the company was in regards to the food supply, like that whole chain, right? The decentralizing of that. And I just think that stood out to me, and maybe you can shed a little light on what it means to you. So
yeah, I think being the local producer is just, I mean, we tasted it in the flavor. There's that aspect, but also the supply chain and like knowing where your food is coming from and not having to worry about a shortage of drivers bringing in produce from California in November. The more food that we can grow in and around urban centers, the better, because then we can start to really move towards what our larger goal is, which is like changing the food system and making it actually sustainable. And I think that the only way to do that is with regenerative agriculture and like building soil. And once you move a lot of these commodity crops off of the fields and you put them indoors and you increase the yield and you decrease the resource input, then you open up all this land. And especially in Illinois, like we have some of the best soil on the planet next to the most fresh water on the planet.
That's crazy, yeah.
I think it's just a golden opportunity to like really change the way that we think about agriculture. So it's not just thousands of acres of corn and soybeans that are being processed for what knows.
It's kind of a tough balance, right? Because one of the things that like traditional food distribution does, I worked in like the McDonald's food distribution system for a while, is traceability. And they do it by law, right? Like if someone gets sick from a hamburger patty in McDonald's, they can tell you which cow it came from.
Oh, wow.
I might be exaggerating a little bit, but
Right.
a lot, like they have this huge layer of traceability, and you lose that when you get to smaller scale. But I think it also becomes like really self-evident. Like, hey, I got sick. Well, yeah, it's freaking Joe, you know. And I'd rather live in that world where it's like,
Right.
I know where my food came from because I know Joe, not because I can look at a database and see that it came from a cow in Texas or whatever.
And like when you bring all that lettuce indoors, it'll kind of switch. Like you'll be able to trace a lot of this stuff that's grown indoors then. And then hopefully you have a relationship with like a local farmer, and then you just trust them because you know how they're raising their animals.
Right. Yeah, it's food for the future, man.
No, for sure.
Truly.
Like you know, a few of the restaurants I've worked in, we've dabbled with hydroponically grown produce. So like lettuce, like you mentioned, get it out of the sand and into these like biodomes or these indoor environments. Seeing mushrooms like this. I know I mentioned yesterday there was like this huge facility I went to on the south side that like reuses compost that they collect from the city.
Right.
So yeah, I just see like I don't see how this is bad for
No.
the environment.
And you were telling us about a project upcoming, possibly working, taking like used waste from Starbucks, right? And
Yeah, Starbucks is like a good example, but I think you guys even pointed out like it'd be cooler to work with like local coffee producers because oyster mushrooms in specific can grow on almost anything. I mean, they can grow on like petroleum.
that's crazy, yeah.
It's nuts. Yeah, and so like some of the stuff that Eric and I are working on is actually training these mushrooms to grow on different substrates and be able to take in coffee grounds or what have you that's available, and then convert them to something that's closer to soil through mushrooms. And so one of the things that we're working on now is this computer vision. So we're talking about getting data sets together. We're starting to like explore the idea of like teaching the computer to understand what the mushrooms are doing and how they're reacting to their environment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually saw Chuck. Like, what was that thing that you picked up? It was like,
I picked up your little R2D2 freaky little robot with the eyeballs.
Oh yeah, the stereoscopic cameras.
The stereoscopic camera.
Oh yeah, the
Obviously.
stereoscopic.
With the
Obviously.
AI brain. What's the plan with that thing? Is that
That's
basically
the
it?
start of the computer vision platform, and we were talking about. I think we'll start with the petri dishes because they're two-dimensional. It's just easier to work with visually.
It's also kind of the first stage where you can introduce them to new substrates to kind of teach them
Right.
and really have like we started like we had been talking about computer vision for a while and like, okay, like how do we train the computer to like understand what a good mushroom is? But then we realized like that's the very end. Like there's so many variables that go into that. We actually just need to start at the very beginning and then work our way up towards that.
When it comes to this mission of training things to grow on things that they don't traditionally, that's a lot of it's going to happen in petri dishes. So I think that's a good point where our mission and like the early stage of the technology is going to line up.
I just and then also you mentioned about like what the byproduct is, right? It like creates like you can take this like so much almost waste from the grown mushrooms, the substrate, and then you can like feed that back into like just this like insane circle of things that just like these possibilities that come out of growing mushrooms is insane. You want to shed a little light and explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like kind of the reason that this all clicked for me initially. It was like we can take waste products from the agricultural industry and from the lumber industry, and they're truly waste products for them. And then we take them, we add some water and some mycelium, and then grow a high quality gourmet product.
That's crazy.
And then what we get from that after, 1 or 2 or 3 flushes of mushrooms, we take that and mix it in with soil, and it acts as like a soil amendment, adding organic matter to the soil. And so you can take a plot of land that has almost no organic matter, say it's just been monocrop for 50 years and they just have been pumping in fertilizers, and you can add this, and over time you're just going to build up the soil organic matter, and that's just off of our waste. Like, we could be paying waste management to just take it away.
Yeah.
But as we scale, and we're talking about 5,000 pounds of this stuff per week, it's like there's a huge opportunity here to actually get into this regenerative agriculture and ecosystem restoration space.
There's also this world of like physical products we haven't talked about, and that's when you get into like myco leathers and like myco packaging, right? So if you imagine the waste of our stuff, one of these bags, break it up, press it into a mold, and let it recolonize for a minute, it could be like a perfectly form-fitted styrofoam thing once you dry it out.
And that's what they're doing with caskets right now.
What?
Yeah, so they're making mycelium caskets.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Wow. That's
Yeah.
there's just no.
I always thought it was weird that you would
and-
put like this beautiful like $10,000
Yeah.
furniture into the ground. It's just like, it doesn't make sense to me.
It's 10 if you have a coupon.
There you go. But that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like to do something and just, I don't know. As I dive more and more like deeper into this thing, it just everything starts making way more sense. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a company out there that would actually pick your the waste up right now, the substrate waste, and then like, I don't know, take it out somewhere? Is that like,
Yeah, there's farms that take it from us. There's a lot of hemp and cannabis growers that do, community gardens, urban farms. But at our scale, it's been tricky to like really make use of it internally. But now as we're scaling, it's like, okay, this isn't just going to be like something that's like, oh, we got to find a way to get rid of it. Like, we're going to have so much of it that we need to make use of it.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's really invigorating us to like go back and like take a look at this and figure out like, how can this make money and like be a viable arm of the business and like grow us towards this vision of like truly sustainable agriculture. Because you can say that you're sustainable, and you can say that like, oh, like hydroponics, mushrooms, whatever it is, but if the whole system isn't,
No, that's true.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We met with a guy that brokered agricultural waste, and I think one of the challenges of just operating a farm this size is that we don't fit that's like made for huge farms. So our waste size wasn't enough for him. We're like too much for like a community garden.
oh, interesting.
So I think we'll hit a sweet spot when we scale up and we can actually start delivering more of the waste actually becomes easier to deal with at some point.
Yeah. Like those big trucks that haul away gravel when they're at like a construction site.
Yeah.
Just filling those suckers up with spent
wow.
substrate and dumping it out in a field. Yeah.
And moving away from plastic bags, right? That's a huge component.
Absolutely.
We haven't really talked about that very much.
Yeah.
There's some proprietary stuff happening there, but
They got a peek
bags,
at it yesterday.
The bags aren't ideal, right?
Well,
Like,
what would replace those? What material would be strong enough to?
So we want to be a little hush hush about this, but
reusable stuff.
yeah, reusable.
There you go. There you go.
I'll bleep it later.
I think it's
We're using bleep.
Wow.
it's incredible what you guys are doing, and I think for people out there that are just finding out about who you guys are and what you guys are doing, it's an incredible opportunity for a lot of us, just like normal citizens out there, like just doing our part in life. It's like, go buy these mushrooms, right? Support a small business that's local here, that's making great product. And by doing so, you're having this all these impacts after, right? And that's, I think, one of the coolest things that I've come across, just learning about you guys and what you guys are doing out there. So, anyways, if you guys are interested in looking and finding their products, right? You want to shed some information on where they can find you guys?
Yeah, for fresh products, definitely local foods. You can find other products on our website at 4starmushrooms.com. And also just feel free to shoot me an email if you're interested in this and you want to get connected. My email is joe@4starmushrooms.com. I just love to meet people. Like, we're only here because of the community that's gotten behind us and our early adopters. Like, we wouldn't be here if people weren't crazy passionate about mushrooms. And so anybody that's excited about them, I'd love to talk to and answer any questions and shed some light and just give them more information, spread that community.
Cool.
I've got so my company's called Cypri Group, and I'm working with a couple.
You spell that?
Cypri. It's an orchid name from a long time ago that just kind of stuck with me. But I am actually through some introductions that Joe has made, working with some other farms and trying to design solutions with them. And I've got a little TikTok channel that actually shows some of the things taken apart, how they work, stuff like that. So it's Muehlbucks, Muehlbucks on pretty much all the social medias, has nerdy mushroom stuff on it. And I'd be happy to talk to you about how to build that stuff too.
Awesome. And besides what we talked about on your expansions, any future plans for you guys that people might want to know about?
We got a lot of plans. It's all focused on this scaling.
Okay.
And so, once we have the mushrooms to really deploy these plans, you'll be hearing from us.
Cool.
We'll definitely be, we post most of our stuff on Instagram, but maybe once we're scaled again, we could come back in and talk about it.
Awesome. And that's Instagram, is that
Just 4-star mushrooms.
4-star mushrooms?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you guys are always posting some pretty cool stuff, so excited. Before you guys leave, I've got some wine here that we're gonna, just a little tradition that we've got here going on.
Is it Reishi wine?
Tannic. It's very tannic. That's all we know. Ooh, Pinot.
This is the opposite. It's bad for your brain.
Yes.
This is for toning it down.
Like,
good for your heart, though.
baseline.
Can I sneak into not a good time. I have an Asian cuisine question for you later, but let's do wine.
So, couldn't think of a better varietal to treat you guys for joining us here at the show. When I think of mushrooms, I love a good Pinot. This was from Cantina Andriano. It's from northern Italy, and it's absolutely underrated, beautiful Pinot Noir for you guys to enjoy with some of the mushrooms that you guys are growing over there. So,
Thank you so much.
yeah, please enjoy that.
Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Andy? Any?
No. Oh, you know what? Can you maybe just briefly touch on, because I don't know if you guys can tell, Joe is a very young man, and you've accomplished quite a lot in such a early period of your life. I know when I was your age, I was just cooking on the line and being an asshole. So any words of wisdom or what inspires you to push yourself or have this ambition and how do you have this just huge outward look on life and you want to touch on that real quick? I know it's a big question, but
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to understanding. I think everybody has a purpose, and you really need to take the time to explore that, and it doesn't come easy. I mean, I've always had this push towards ecology that kind of found its way here, but I think really trying to understand why you do what you do. For instance, Simon Sinek has been a huge force in my life, and being able to understand why the business exists, because it sounds kind of weird, but you get stuck in the day to day and you kind of forget we're not just growing mushrooms, right? We're not just trying to make a buck. You really have to, if you can, which I think everybody at some point can, follow what really drives you, and that just might be helping people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But once you take the time and you really uncover that, and I think it takes a lot of writing. I think it takes just sitting and thinking, writing that out in a notebook and iterating over what you actually think about the world and what you want to happen. Because when it comes down to it, we're just going to die pretty soon. So finding your passion, being able to explore that, I think is the biggest thing. And don't listen to anybody else. Once you know, then just go all in.
No, interesting you say that. I had a quick chat with one of my staff this week about not giving a shit about other people's opinions. And it's once you do formulate, what you believe your path is, and as long as you do it with, good intentions, it's trust yourself, right? And I think you definitely embody that. So,
and get people that believe in you. Maybe they don't understand it. A lot of people, I mean, my family, my friends definitely didn't understand it at first, but then there's been, obviously my family, and then some of my friends have really bought in to what we're doing, and our new employees have bought in, And that's what makes it real.
Yeah.
Is like being able to see other people like understanding what you see, and then getting them to buy in, and then they want to put their expertise and their purpose.
Yeah.
Like you help them find their purpose, and they'll help you realize your vision. I think.
Dude, shout out to Ross, Rudy, and Nick real quick. 'Cause
Yeah,
those guys
and Sean.
Yeah, and Sean. Those guys would have been awesome to join us today, but they're working hard over there.
Yeah.
And solid dudes.
And building a team is like, that's been the most rewarding part of this whole thing is like seeing their perspective change. And like, a lot of them, like Ross in particular, he graduated college. He started working here, and I think it was a cool job. Like it's interesting, but then I was able to start to share this vision with him, and it's just been like, now his wheels are turning and he's thinking about different things. And like, so we're getting bigger and we're expanding our thinking on these problems, and that's how stuff really gets done.
No, that's always like a huge bonus when you can get, the people who work with you to understand that like passion and that fire and contribute to that, right? Like go home and think about it and not just shut it off, right?
Exactly, yeah.
That's huge. It's rare, so you guys are lucky.
It's all about the why.
Yeah. Well, it's been incredible to see what you guys have already accomplished so far, and I can't wait to see what you guys do in the future. So we'll be keeping a close eye on you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having.
so
Thanks
much
for
having
cooking.
us.
Like
Yeah.
thanks for the smells.
This is a great day.
Awesome, man. Well, that's Joe and Eric from 4starmushrooms.com, and be sure to go check out their products. All right.
Awesome. Thanks
for
guys.
joining us.
Awesome.